Sir, we can start, sir.
I welcome to all participants, panelists, and all my colleagues to this webinar. Now, today's topic, as I have been shared, that is going to be presented by Dr. Rajiv Kumar Jain, sir, OCU Health Escapes, episode 12. So before starting this topic, let me introduce and have the brief introduction of Dr. Rajiv Kumar Jain, sir. As we all know that Dr. Rajiv Kumar Jain is our Vice President of AIOSD, Delhi branch. And sir is having a very vast qualification which cannot be enumerated in a single page. It will take a long time, but I will speak out very silent feature about him. Presently, Dr. Rajiv Jain sir is the Senior Consultant Health, Indian Railway, and posted at Divisional Hospital, New Delhi. He is having 40 years of experience in health and hospital administration, having fellow award of Indian Public Health Association, fellow award of Association of Environmental and Occupational Health, Delhi, published, presented more than 145 scientific papers in national and international conferences and journals books, fellowship, scholarship by World Health Organization, WHO, National Institute of Health, USA, Canadian Society for International Health, International Clinical Epidemiology Network, and International Society for Priorities in Healthcare. Sir has done his MBBS from Maulana Azad Medical College only. After that, he did his DCH and then MD. He has also done DNB in health administration, including hospital administration. He is having certificate and diploma in Chinese language. So these are the very few things which I have enumerated out, Dr. Rajiv Jain sir. But as we all know that while we going on so many episodes and series of the webinar and daily update on the COVID, as he has very concisely and briefly given to all of us, and very vast and experienced knowledge has been shared by Dr. Rajiv Kumar Jain, which is very, very important for our ourselves and our family, as well as to all the participants. So not wasting much time and not taking much time, I will welcome Dr. Rajiv Kumar Jain sir for his valuable time and valuable speech for all the audience. Over to Dr. Rajiv Kumar Jain sir. Sir.
Thank you, Dr. Shashi Bhushan, for the nice words you spoke about me. I don't know how much I deserve, but all the same, let's get on with the business of today. That is OCU Healthscapes. Today is an important episode because this is a monthly magazine on environmental and occupational health updates, and this is issue number 12. So episode 12 means for full 1 year, once every month, we have been having this OCU Healthscapes, and all the previous 11 episodes are available for all the people to view on the DigiConnect Enoch DigiConnect channel in YouTube. And this 12th episode also will be uploaded on the same Enoch DigiConnect webinar platform on YouTube after today's webinar is completed, so that you could revisit all the slides, all the content, and all the discussion on various issues in environmental and occupational health issues, whether they are local, whether they are regional, whether they are global. So one capsule for 1 month gives an update on all the matters which are important for all occupational and environmental health practitioners in the country or abroad, whether they are located in India or they are located out of India. So let's get on with today's episode. But before I start, the first slide I will share with you to summarize as to what issues we shall be tackling in this episode today. Next slide, please. So these are the issues we will be discussing in today's episode. First and foremost, the climate emergency. Second, Lancet countdown on health and climate change. And after the policy brief globally, policy brief for India was launched this week itself. Tobacco use continues to decline globally. The Tobacco Atlas released by the World Health Organization during the last 1 month will be highlighted. Loads of pollution burdening health, the impact of pollution on health shall also be discussed. Takeaways from COP26 deal will also be highlighted. Then 10th Global Conference on Health Promotion, which is going to be held in December 2021. A few highlights of that conference, the global conference, will be shared. Workplace bullying costs economy 239 million euros per year. This study shall be shared. Factors associated with workability, another study which is published in a global journal, will be discussed. Leisure but not occupational physical activity and sedentary behavior associated with better health. This is another article worth being shared with all occupational health professionals. Developing a competency framework of interprofessional occupational health team is another important article published in a global international journal. We shall share few highlights of this article. And last but not the least, the National Family Health Survey number 5, which was done for the period 2019 to 21 and released 2 days back, shall also be discussed. So let's get on with the first topic, that is climate emergency. The world is still headed to a catastrophic warming of around 2.4 to 2.7 degrees Celsius over pre-industrial levels, according to the United Nations Environment Programme's update released in Glasgow. Annual CO2 emissions in 2019, if you see, total in billion tons, China is number 1, 10.2. US is number 2, 5.3. European Union with 27 countries is number 3, 2.9. And India is 4th globally, 2.6 billion tons. Number 5 is Russia with 1.7. Japan is 1.1, Iran 0.8, Indonesia 0.6, Brazil 0.5, and UK 0.4. But if you see this absolute number in terms of per capita, that is in tons. So China is only having 7.1 ton per capita. United States is at the top with 16.1 ton per capita. So biggest CO2 emission is by USA itself. And number 2 is Russia with 11.5 ton per capita. Third is Iran with 9.4, and 4th is Japan with 8.7, and 5th is China at 7.1. And if you look at this, India is only having 1.9 ton per capita. So India is not the culprit in CO2 emissions. It is the other countries, all the countries listed in this graph, China, US, European Union, Russia, Japan, Iran, Indonesia, Brazil, UK have higher per capita carbon dioxide emission than India. And if you look at European Union, the 27 countries combined, they release 6.6 ton per capita carbon dioxide. So this fact must be known to all the people in the world, that India is not a major CO2 emission in terms of per capita. And this kind of presentation of data, the objective data is per capita in tons. Next slide. Now, the policy brief for India, the Lancet Countdown on Health and Climate Change. This is an important event which was coordinated by Indian Council of Medical Research in India, along with the Lancet, the oldest and the largest journal in the world in medical sciences. I would like to share with you a portion of the video of the release function in New Delhi, which was held by ICMR. And this video, the important part of the presentation, I'll share that with you in this video. Let's see what the Lancet is saying in this video.
All right, first and foremost, I wanted to thank you for the very kind invitation of having me here. Having this event at the ICMR is a real honor for us. And I particularly wanted to thank all of the authors and reviewers of the policy brief, which is absolutely fantastic and such an important piece to put health at the center of the climate conversation in India. So thank you so much for this event. It's really an honor. I'm gonna walk you a bit through our 2021 report that, as you have already heard, is entitled A Code Red for a Healthy Future. I'm gonna show you why it's entitled that. And I'm going to try to highlight a few of the findings for India, which complement a bit what you have already in this policy brief, which obviously in the policy brief you have the main findings. As you know, the Lancet Countdown is a big research collaboration. We nucleate around 43 partners around the world, from main and leading universities to UN agencies. And our family is composed of 120 researchers and scientists that go from the physical sciences, environmental sciences, medical sciences, and humanistic sciences as well. And each year, these researchers come together to produce data to track progress on health and climate change. We produce annual indicators, of which you're seeing the latest one. But this is just the latest of the series of the Lancet Countdown. It's actually the 5th iteration that we have of over 40 indicators where we track the health impacts of climate change up to date, as well as what are the implications of the world's response to climate change, the way we're adapting and we're mitigating to climate change, and the way we're transitioning to a low carbon economy, and what that means for health. So we try to put health at the center of the climate agenda because, as the first series of the Lancet Countdown has shown, climate change is a health issue, is the biggest global health threat of the 21st century, but also tackling climate change is the biggest health opportunity of the 21st century. The 2021 report, as I said, gives a code red for health. And this is because in every one of the indicators in which we're tracking the health impacts of climate change, things are getting worse really rapidly, and they're all flashing red. All corners of the world are affected, but what we're seeing with particular concern is that it's the most vulnerable peoples in every country that are having the biggest burden of climate change. And when we think about climate change, the first thing that comes to mind is obviously increase of temperatures. So one of the things that we track is the extent to which very vulnerable populations, people over 65 years of age, very young children under 1 year of age, are being exposed to heat waves. And heat waves, as you know, are not only very uncomfortable, they're also silent killers. They can really tip people over the edge. They can worsen underlying health conditions, particularly affecting those with heart disease, they can lead to acute kidney failure, and they can be lethal to these very vulnerable groups. So as you can see here, let me just put the pointer. in the two graphs here on the right, exposure to heat waves is increasing very rapidly, particularly since the 2010s roughly. In 2020, we saw in people over 65 years of age, 3 billion more person days of heat wave exposure than in a baseline that just finished about 16 years ago. And as you can see down here, India is not an exception. In India, we're seeing extremes of heat and heat wave exposure increasing very rapidly. So this is a particular concern for its morbidity, its effects on mortality. But it's important to note that extremes of heat also has indirect effects on our health by undermining the social determinants of health. Another thing that we track is the extent to which extreme heat exposure is affecting our capacity to work, particularly for laborers that work outdoors, for the most vulnerable groups. We estimate that in 2020, almost 300 billion hours of potential work were lost because of extreme heat exposure. And we estimate that around 1/3 of those occurred in India. If you see here, we've divided countries by Human Development Index group. And the concerning thing is that it's countries with low and medium levels of Human Development Index that are seeing the biggest losses, and particularly seeing those losses occurring in the agricultural sectors. Obviously, those very, very vulnerable workers, which also are the ones that determine our food productivity, which is another concern. In India, we're seeing that 60% of the losses of potential work hours, and this amount to 113 billion hour loss, so 60% of those 113 billion hours were lost in the agricultural sector. And we estimate that if those potential labor hours were actually lost, this would correspond to 3 to 4.5% of India's total GDP. So not only does heat affect our health directly, but also indirectly by undermining our livelihoods, our capacity to work, and the social determinants of health. Another concern that we have is with respect to food security. In this indicator, what we're tracking is the extent to which, because of the rising temperatures, the crop yield potential starts going down. We know that as temperatures go up, crops mature more quickly. And what that means is that when they reach maturity, the size of the seeds are smaller, so they yield lower volumes. What we're seeing here is in the global data, the crop yield potential for maize, winter wheat, spring wheat, and soybeans, and we also have data for rice, is going down around the world. And what you can see here is what this data looks like for India. For India too, we see that all of the crops are reducing their potential, particularly maize, but also rice, soybean, and winter wheat with a bit of fluctuation. So this is particularly concerning, obviously, because we're only looking at one aspect of it that has to do with temperature. But on top of this, we also have an increased incidence of extreme weather events, an increased incidence of extreme floods, and also of extreme droughts, all of which are undermining our capacity to produce food. So terrestrial food security being increasingly put at risk because of climate change. And as temperatures change, as rainfall patterns change and humidity patterns change, so does the environmental suitability for the transmission of climate-sensitive diseases, particularly those diseases that are transmitted by arthropod vectors, but also those transmitted by food, by water, or by air that are very sensitive to the environmental conditions. We have already heard a bit about infectious disease transmission, particularly through mosquitoes. And here what you can see is the change in the environmental suitability for the transmission of dengue. Dengue is a leading cause of serious illness and death in Asian, Latin American countries. And the global incidence continues to increase, reaching an estimated 100 to 400 million infections each year. And globally, we're seeing that because of the environmental conditions, the likelihood of transmission of dengue is increasing by 7% for Albopictus and 13% for Aedes aegypti. This is with respect to a 1950-1954 baseline. And as you can see here is the Americas and the Western Pacific, two regions that are very heavily affected by dengue, where we see the biggest increase in the environmental suitability for its transmission in the latest years. And in this way, we have similar results for every indicator. We see that the hours available for safe physical activity are reducing because of an increasing temperature. So we're losing more and more hours of safe physical activity around the world. We're also seeing that negative sentiment expression online is increasing during heat waves because of the mental health impact of extremes of heat. We're seeing that heat-related mortality is also increasing, the lethality of extreme weather events, marine food security put increasingly at risk, sea level rise starting to affect coastal populations and our water supplies, extreme drought events affecting more and more of the land surface area, and wildfires starting to increase around the world, increasing our exposure and their intensity. And we've seen what happened this year in Greece, in Australia last year, what happens in the States very regularly, and even in Siberia. So all of our indicators are flashing red. However, perhaps the most concerning thing is that even with all of these alarms, the world is still failing to respond at pace, and particularly that we're seeing the same trend that we've seen with COVID-19. With COVID-19, the world's response was not a just response, was not a fast response, and we didn't see the international collaboration we were expecting. We're seeing similar patterns in the response to climate change. The world is failing to deliver a just and equitable response to climate change. We know that rapid decarbonization would lead to direct benefits because it would avoid the worst case scenario of climate change impacts, but it would also deliver immediate benefits to health in terms of the co-benefits of that transition through cleaner air, better diets, more active lifestyles, more livable, better, greener cities. One of the things that is particularly concerning, and I know that will be presented a bit in further detail.
That's all. We'll go on and see it later because this is pretty long. In fact, the entire video that I've shared with you, the ceremony went on for 1.5 hours. So we shall, I'll give you a link where you can see the entire 1.5 hour release of the policy update. The key highlights of this policy update, we shall share with you now. Let's go back to our presentation and see what the policy brief for India, the Lancet report, talks about. This policy brief, next slide, next, please. Yes. The title is Climate Change, a Threat to Global Health Security. And this is said by Dr. Samiran Panda, Scientist G, Medical and Director Nari and Head of Division of Epidemiology and Communicable Disease of ICMR Delhi headquarters. And along with Dr. Liana Susan George from Clinical Studies, Trials and Production Unit, Division of Epidemiology and Communicable Disease, ICMR headquarters. And if we see the climate change, how it is a threat to global health security, we shall see in subsequent slides. Next slide, please. Premature mortality due to ambient air pollution. Air pollution has been identified as a prime environmental health threat since it is one of the major contributors to premature death and disease globally. But it also affects economic productivity. Air pollution is addressed across the 3 different sustainable development goals, that is SDGs, number 11, 7, and 3, which consider the measurement of air pollution levels in cities and access to clean energy, particularly clean household fuels and technologies, and mortality due to air pollution, that is ambient and household respectively. 2 key air pollutants of concern are PM2.5 and PM10. The latter, that is PM10, may lodge deep inside the lungs, while PM2.5 microns or less may pass through the lung barrier and enter the blood system with a potential for impact on whole body and organs. Most common activities that result in particulate pollution are construction, demolition, mining operations, agriculture, burning of fossil fuels in factories, power plants, diesel and gasoline-powered motor vehicles. Chronic exposure to particulate pollution can result in development of asthma in children, impairment of lung function in adolescents, worsening of COPD in adults, and increased risk of death from cardiovascular diseases, stroke, and lung cancer. It may also lead to poor birth outcomes such as preterm deliveries, low birth weight, fetal and infant mortality, and in older adults, cognitive impairments and dementia. Data from 2021 Global Lancet Countdown report shows that in 2019, it was observed that over 907,000 deaths were attributed to anthropogenic PM2.5. This is an increase in deaths by 8% when compared to 2015. The grave matter concern is that of these deaths, 17%, that is over 157,000 of them, occurred as a result of the combustion of coal, mainly in power plants, followed by the coal combustion in industrial and household settings. This resulted in a 9% increase in the number of deaths related to coal-derived PM2.5 in India in 2019 compared to 2015. India depends hugely on coal-based power plants for its energy. However, many of these power plants are yet to install pollution control technologies as prescribed by the central government's revised emission standards of 2015, which has extended its deadline for implementation to 2022. A major barrier to installation of these pollution control technologies is cost. The cost of installing technology to control for sulfur oxides, nitrogen oxides, and particulate matter are estimated to be between 73,000 crore rupees or 10 billion US dollars and 86,000 crore rupees, which is 12 billion US dollars. This in turn would result in the cost of electricity generated by coal power plants to be increased between 9 and 21%, which means 0.32 and 0.72 per kilowatt hour rupees. However, these costs must be considered in the wider context of the economic and social cost of treating the health impacts of air pollution. Hence, for India to meet its global commitments, the need of the hour is to invest more on renewable, cleaner, and sustainable sources of energy. Next slide, please. This is what premature deaths attributable to PM2.5 exposure due to power plant. Blue is coal and orange is non-coal. And you see the contribution: power plants, industry, and households contribute major portion. Others is non-coal. Next slide, please. Emissions from agricultural production and consumption is another issue. As the Indian population continues to grow along with an increase in purchasing capacity in rapid urbanization, the demand for livestock products is bound to increase, resulting in a surge in their production. Ruminants such as cattle, sheep, goats, and buffalo produce meat and milk, which are good sources of high quality protein for human beings. However, they are also major contributors for greenhouse gas emissions, such as carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrogen oxide, which are byproducts of respiration, enteric fermentation, and manure management, respectively. Of these greenhouse gases, methane and nitrous oxide have the highest global warming potential. Methane is production in the rumen as a result of fermentation of feeds. It occurs due to the presence of a group of microorganisms called methanogens that reside in the reticulorumen and large intestine of the ruminant livestock. With the help of these microorganisms, fermentation of the plant materials such as celluloses, fiber, starches, and sugars occur in the digestive tract. Enteric methane, which is produced as a result of the digestive process, is then expelled by the animals when they burp. Data from 2021 Global Lancet Countdown report show that 46% of all agricultural emissions in India are contributed by ruminants such as goats, sheep, and cattle. It has been observed that the emission intensities differ, and it is dependent on a combination of factors such as the quality, digestibility, and composition of the feed ration. This has a huge impact on the level of enteric methane emissions and manure emissions per unit of production of milk or meat. Emissions per unit of product vary depending on the commodity. It has been observed to be highest for beef, approximately 300 kg carbon dioxide equivalent per kilogram of protein produced, followed by meat and milk from small ruminants, that is 165 and 112 kg carbon dioxide equivalent per kg respectively. Cow milk, chicken products, and pork have the lowest global average emission intensities, that is below 100 carbon dioxide equivalent per kg. Methane emissions from livestock can be reduced through improved animal health, genetics, better rearing practices, manure management practices, and a reduction in the number of unproductive animals in the farm. Simple technologies, but very far-reaching implications. Next slide, please. Detection, preparedness, and response to health emergencies is another issue. Climate change is projected to cause more frequent and intense health emergencies. The International Health Regulation, that is IHR, is an internationally agreed instrument for global public health security. It represents the joint commitment for shared responsibilities and collective defense against the spread of disease. Article 2 of the IHR states that to prevent, protect against, control, and provide a public health response to the international spread of disease in ways that are commensurate with and restricted to public health risks and which avoid unnecessary interference with international traffic and trade. To achieve global health security, it is crucial that all countries make efforts to strengthen their national capacity for surveillance, disease prevention, and control, especially at the designated points of entry, that is POE. The IHR pledges member countries to work together at times of international public health emergencies, and this is to be achieved by building global partnerships and international collaboration. The IHR has identified 13 core national capacities, for which core capacity 8 focuses on the implementation of the National Health Emergency Framework. India has achieved 80% implementation of the National Health Emergency Framework. This framework not only applies to public health events and emergencies such as the occurrence of droughts, floods, storms, and air pollution, etc. Instead, it also addresses the response to infectious disease threats. The relevance of the IHR has come to the fore in recent times with invigorated importance, especially since the onset of COVID-19 pandemic. The implementation of IHR has played a vital role in limiting the spread of COVID-19 pandemic. However, several gaps in its implementation still prevail, and these need to be addressed urgently. As per the 2021 Global Lancet Countdown report, of the 35 countries with low Human Development Index with an 80% of implementation, India is the 7th country with the highest level of implementation of its IHR core capacity. It attributes a position it shares with Morocco and Bhutan. However, India still has a long way to go before it achieves the complete implementation of the IHR. Next slide, please. So, the policy recommendations, and here they are. Number 1, the combustion of coal, mainly in power plants, followed by industrial and household settings, have resulted in an increase in premature mortality. Therefore, India needs to urgently wean away from coal as its main source of energy and needs to invest more on renewable, cleaner, and sustainable sources such as solar, wind, or hydro energy. Second recommendation, air pollution has been recognized as a major determinant for negative health outcomes in India. Therefore, there is an urgent need to establish regulatory framework pertaining to the control of air pollution at the source of its generation, such as industrial emissions, construction size, vehicle exhaust, etc. It is also necessary to ensure the effective implementation of these regulatory measures as well. Number 3, since 46% of all agricultural emissions in India are contributed by ruminants such as goats, sheep, and cattle, India needs to move away from the traditional animal husbandry practices and invest in newer technologies that will improve animal breeding and rearing practices, use of good livestock feeds, and implement proper manure management, all of which will contribute to the reduction of the GHG, that is greenhouse gases emissions. Number 4, and the last, India has shown great progress in achieving the implementation of the National Health Emergency Framework under core capacity 8 of IHR. However, India still needs to further invest in preparedness of infrastructure, human resources, and relevant health systems capacities, such as testing and surveillance systems. So these are the recommendations for the policymakers. Next slide, please. So the combination or the coordination or collaboration of the Lancet, the Indian Council of Medical Research, and the Indian Council of Medical Research National Institute for Implementation Research in Non-Communicable Diseases, Jodhpur, that is NIR-NCD, together have produced this policy brief for India, which has far-reaching implications for India and the world. Next slide, please. Let's go on to another topic now. Outdoor air pollution and cardiovascular health. Exposure to outdoor air pollution and heart disease is an important issue. Continuous exposure to outdoor air pollution increases the risk of cardiovascular diseases largely because of PM2.5. PM2.5 are tiny particles that have the capability to get deep into the lungs and into the bloodstream through breathing polluted air, causing respiratory and cardiovascular illnesses. Normal versus abnormal blood flow due to plaque in the artery is shown in the bottom left, the red diagram in the circle. Effects on cardiovascular health are high blood pressure, heart attacks, stroke, arrhythmias, and heart failure. And this is serious matter. So climate and cardiovascular health are very close related, especially outdoor air pollution. Next slide, please. Another important report assessing the gaps between policy and implementation, that is stubble burning in Punjab. This is an important report which has come out. It is evident from the analysis that not one, but multiple factors like high dependence on agricultural subsidies, exploitation of groundwater, prevalent market support for rice and wheat, absence of multiple cropping system, frequent experimentation with machineries, and inadequate straw management facilities have exacerbated the issue of stubble burning in Punjab. Next slide, please. The stubble burning issue calls for a closer look at upstream determinants, farmers' perspectives, and close intersectoral coordination of all stakeholders to facilitate practical solutions. This was said by Dr. Purnima Prabhakaran, who is the Deputy Director at the Center for Environmental Health, Public Health Foundation of India, and she is a senior research scientist at the Center for Chronic Disease Control in New Delhi. Next slide, please. Dr. Sania Prakash, Research Fellow at the Center for Chronic Disease Control, New Delhi. Tackling the stubble burning crisis is a little tricky and requires more finesse. When a plethora of factors are directly or indirectly affecting, it is myopic to discuss and diagnose the problem in isolation. It is high time for the state to probe into the fundamental causes of the issue rather than offering surface level assessment. Next slide, please. Key recommendations are improve the minimum support price dynamics and encourage deficiency payments to promote diversification. Second, next slide. Establish a review process to monitor and evaluate the policies proposed for sustainable agricultural interventions in Punjab is the second recommendation. Next slide, please. The third recommendation is to create a market for alternate crops with proper supply chain and incentives in place. Next slide, please. The fourth recommendation is strengthen financial deliveries and infrastructure to relieve the additional burden put on subsidy-driven agriculture system. This is an important area where government needs to come out with policy and plan of action. So this burning of paddy fields after the harvest or stubble burning just prior to winter has often been labeled as the main culprit behind the poor air quality in North India. With only 10 to 15 days left between the rice harvesting season and the wheat sowing time, farmers often resort to burning to quickly eliminate the paddy stubble. Every year, Punjab alone produces 20 million tons of paddy residue, of which 80 to 90% gets burnt on ground. Despite years of work by the government agencies to curb stubble burning, Punjab witnessed an unfortunate increase of 44.5% incidents in 2020. In an effort to understand the complexity of the issue, this study sought to explore the gaps which are hindering the implementation of the existing policies. The study reviewed the policies and programs introduced in the last decade, that is 2009 to 2019, by the government to control this menace. After examining the policies, it was found that there are various factors which may have directly or indirectly influenced the problem of stubble burning. That is, groundwater exploitation, absence of multiple cropping system, market dynamics of supporting the rice and wheat cultivation, and problems for small farmers, lack of facilities for straw management, experimentation with in situ machineries, labor shortage, over-reliance on agricultural subsidies. Next slide. While recognizing these barriers that are affecting effective implementation of existing regulations, the report proposes various recommendations that may assist in addressing the problem. I've already shared with you the solutions: promoting more research opportunities to identify and adapt to depleting labor irrigation and soil conditions, enhancing participatory approach, including farming communities, empowering farmers outreach and education, placing more emphasis on the impacts of stubble burning on public health, strengthening multi-sectoral thinking and action. And it is high time that the state should start looking at the root causes of the problem rather than providing the surface level assessment and solutions to address those factors alone. A multi-pronged approach is required that takes into account all the issues and barriers to meet the desired goal of zero stubble burning. So this is important research and which needs to be addressed. Let's go to another topic, that is tobacco use. Tobacco use continues to decline globally. Tobacco use around the world is on a downward trend, but the government still need to keep investing to help their population quit. Officials from the World Health Organization said in a report. The tobacco threat is 1.3 billion, the number of tobacco users in the world today. From 200 million decrease from 2015, this is expected to drop another 2.3% by 2025. The report defines the tobacco use as any tobacco use of any type, whether smoked or smokeless, but exclude e-cigarettes, users of which are estimated to be increasing by 4.8 million a year since 2011. 8 million plus are the people, in the number of people died from diseases related to tobacco in 2019. The number of annual deaths can be expected to keep growing even once rates of tobacco use are in decline, because tobacco kills its users and people exposed to its emissions slowly. America, Southeast Asia, and Africa lead the charge. Tobacco use is declining on average across the world, but with 3 regions headed to over 30% reduction. The fastest decline is in the Americas, where an average relative reduction of 33% is expected between 2010, 21%, and 2025, that is 14%. Africa and Southeast Asia are both on track to achieve an average reduction of almost 32%. If current progress continues in Southeast Asia, smoking rates in the region can reach as low as 11% in 2025, making it the second lowest regional rate. Commenting nations in Southeast Asia for achieving a steep decline in tobacco use, the WHO said that persistent and concerted efforts must be sustained and scaled up. India is among the top performers. India is among 60 countries on track to achieve the global target of a 30% reduction in tobacco use by 2025, according to the report. In India, average tobacco users is expected to drop to under a quarter, that is 23.4% by 2025, from nearly half the population, that is 48.7% in 2000. That is the report Global Tobacco Atlas says. 273.6 million estimated tobacco users in India. Of these, 82 million are smokers. And you see in the graph, male and female, males dominate and females are at the bottom in red. And if you consider average, is the yellow in the graph at the bottom. In 2000, around a third, that is 32.7% of the global population used some form of tobacco. By 2020, this rate has declined to under a quarter, that is 22.3% of the world. This rate is projected to decline further to around a fifth, that is 20.4% of the global population by 2025, as per WHO projections. 150 countries are now seeing their tobacco use rate decline, the report says. Sustained political commitment and relentless efforts by countries to strengthen surveillance, expand tobacco control measures, including cessation services to help users quit tobacco, are some of the key reasons for success. This is what Dr. Poonam Khetrapal Singh, who is the regional director for Southeast Asia region of the World Health Organization, said on this tobacco report. It's worthwhile studying this tobacco report. Let's go to another topic. That's loads of pollution burdening health. Doctors say even healthy youngsters have shown asthma-like symptoms due to poor air. Air pollution deaths in India were attributable to air pollution, 1.7 million in 2020. It accounted for 18% of all the deaths in the country last year. Between 1990 and 2019, there was a 115% increase in deaths related to air pollution. Short-term impacts are difficulty breathing and wheezing, blood blocked nose, eye irritation, sore throat, respiratory infections, and headache. Long-term impacts are increase in blood pressure and diabetes, increase in heart attacks, increase in stroke vulnerability, premature birth in pregnant women, underdeveloped lungs in children, lung cancer, increase in chronic respiratory diseases such as asthma and COPD. So important is to have N95 mask, keeping yourself safe from COVID and pollution. And using N95 mask correctly is also a very important task. Choose a mask that uses N95 or N99 filter that can keep out 99% of the smaller particulate matter. Do not use a surgical mask as it offers no protection against pollution. If possible, purchase a reusable and washable mask to reduce waste. Buy a mask that fits well over the chin and is not loose. Do not reuse disposable masks. Change after the mask is wet or has been used for 6 hours. While in use, avoid touching the mask. Place the mask to your face. Pinch the metal strip or strip edge of the mask so it molds to the shape of your nose. And most important, before touching the mask, clean hands with an alcohol-based hand rub or soap and water. So all precautions are important for COVID as well as for pollution. Next slide, please. COP26 conference, takeaways from the deal. A look at what was achieved and what was not achieved in Glasgow. Curbing emission target 1.5 degrees centigrade. Nations agreed to focus on the Paris goal of keeping global warming from going beyond 1.5 degrees centigrade. Experts have long advocated this, but some nations had been pressing on to the option of aiming for well below 2 degrees centigrade. But finally, it was agreed to be 1.5 degrees centigrade. Coal and fossil fuels. Nations also agreed to explicitly target coal use and fossil fuel subsidies, though the original proposals were greatly watered down. New targets in 2022. Major emitters will present new targets at the 2022 UN Climate Conference in Egypt next year. The three important other achievements. Previous slide, please. Aid to poor nations. There was a bad blood going into COP26 as rich nations had failed to meet a pledge of providing $100 billion per year to poor nations to expedite a clean technology shift. The final agreement expressed deep regret about this and urged the West to pay as soon as possible. Second, no reparations. Wealthy nations rejected the demands to compensate poor countries for the climate destruction, which the former are responsible for because of past emissions. The latter were angered, but nevertheless backed the deal in the hope of making progress on this issue next year. Third issue, carbon trading. The rules regarding carbon trading for achieving net zero by 2050 was one of the hardest fought issues. While a compromise was found that may add trillions of dollars to fight climate crisis, many say the Glasgow Climate Pact left big loopholes which may get exploited. So good and bad go together. Next issue for today's episode of OcuHealthscape is the 10th Global Conference on Health Promotion Health Promotion for Wellbeing, Equity, and Sustainable Development from 13 to 15 December 2021. And it is all of us who can join this free of charge. No charges for registration for this 3-day global event by World Health Organization. The website address is 10gchp.org. 10gchp.org. Go to this website, register yourself, and attend this important event on health promotion from 13 December to 15 December 2021. World Health Organization will be holding this conference with the support of Finland, the United Arab Emirates, United Nations agencies, and partners. The conference will be organized to address how health promotion can advance well-being. Health promotion is the process of enabling people to increase control over and to improve their health. Health promotion is about creating the conditions and healthy environments for people where they live, work, age, and play. Well-being is a positive state experienced by individuals and societies and a resource for daily life determined by social, economic, and environmental conditions. The COVID-19 pandemic has clearly revealed the dangers for the world if health is not considered in all its policies. Moving forward, there is a need for resilient societies that are better able to address health risks stemming from decisions in non-health sectors. At the same time, it is clear that the primacy of economic growth is not the best possible marker to foster overall development. Thus, the concept of well-being is increasingly used in member states to reflect the individuality of sustainable development goals. As defined in the WHO Constitution, health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. WHO has never addressed the issue as a theme of a major conference. Next slide, please. Participants will discuss the contribution that health promotion can make to people's and society's well-being. They will address such contributions with regard to key components of well-being. Discussions will be organized around broad areas of people, planet, and prosperity. The conference will offer an opportunity to present successful country examples that health promotion action has achieved regarding the shift to good governance for health and well-being, and how this contributed to overall public health challenges and paved the way to building forward using health promotion approaches. At the end of the conference, participants will issue a political statement with key requirements for governments to adopt and adapt an expanded health promotion approach to advance well-being. Next slide, please. Yes, the goal is to seize the opportunities for health promotion to advance well-being. Key objectives of the conference are to discuss how to expand health promotion to advance well-being and equity, building on successful evidence and experience to foster healthy population, identify key realistic interventions to support the health promotion and well-being agendas in order to accelerate progress on the SDGs, emphasize the role of health promotion in public health emergency, preparedness, and response towards building forward healthier and fairer societies, explore innovative health promotion approaches to enable societies and communities to flourish. Expected key outcomes are a high-level political document by participants on health promotion and well-being, and all the participants, all the stakeholders, member states, UN, international organization, civil society, private sector, international financial institution, foundation, representatives from the research community, schools of public health, economics, etc., and members of national parliaments shall be the participants. And all of you can attend this free of charge. Now we go to another important study, workplace bullying. How much is cost? 239 million euros per year. NUI Galway study finds that bullying is more prevalent in public sector than the private. Next slide, please. The findings are contained in a new NUI Galway study on workplace bullying led by Dr. John Cullinan of the discipline of economics and Dr. Margaret Hodgins from the discipline of health promotion. The study has been published in the journal Occupational Medicine. In addition, the study finds that although bullying is more prevalent in the public sector, it has a larger effect on absences in the private sector. Workplace bullying is defined as aggressive behavior perpetrated by one or more people, repeatedly and systematically over a prolonged time period, where the targeted person feels unable to defend themselves. Next slide, please. Economic cost. In a previous study, the NUI Galvez research team highlighted the relationship between bullying and work-related stress in the Irish workplace. The current study builds on this to examine the economic cost of workplace bullying. The research described the range of impacts of workplace bullying on individuals and organizations. Using statistical methods, it estimates the number of workdays lost as a result of workplace bullying and calculates the economic value of the associated lost productivity. Commenting on the study, Dr. Cullinan said, workplace bullying is a pervasive problem with significant personal and wider costs. Our study highlights the considerable economic cost of workplace bullying in Ireland. In addition to lost productivity from workplace bullying, there are also likely to be costs associated with early retirement and presenteeism. Furthermore, bullying-related costs are unlikely to have gone away as a result of the new COVID-19 work from home practices. Next slide. How to tackle the problem. Dr. Hodgins called for organizations to adopt anti-bullying policies in order to tackle the problem. To tackle the problem, organizations need an anti-bullying policy in order to signal to staff that bullying is unacceptable, she said. However, a policy is insufficient in itself, and it is vital that it is implemented fairly and in a timely fashion. Ideally, organizations should be proactive, identifying how and when bullying occurs in the organization, and be prepared to develop specific interventions that are appropriate to the context. Next slide. The factors associated with workability is another issue which has been published in an important article. First is physical and mental health. Insomnia is second. Third is hours worked and type of contract. Fourth is work-life balance. Fifth is adequate training. And sixth is no accident history. These are the factors associated with workability. Next slide, please. Factors associated with workability in Spanish health center workers is published as an article in Occupational Medicine Journal. Workability is defined as the perceived likelihood of completing habitual work tasks in accordance with work demands, state of health, and physical and mental ability. The study identifies factors associated with workability. Next slide, please. This is the abstract of the study. The background is the concept of workability provides a conceptual framework and proposes measures for the evaluation of relevant actions focused on a healthy workforce. In Spain, one of the countries with the highest life expectancy, there are practically no scientific studies on workability and its associated factors. The aim of the study is, the objective of the study is to examine the associations between workability and variables related to health and work in a sample of workers from Spanish health centers. Next slide. Methods used were cross-sectional study, including 1,184 health center workers who completed a questionnaire at baseline comprising measures of workability, health, and other work-related factors. Workability has been analyzed as a one-factor construct and as a two-factor construct. Multinomial logistic regression models were used to analyze factors associated with workability. The results were, as a one-dimensional construct, workability is associated with physical and mental health, number of hours of work, insomnia, work and family life balance, adequate training, never having had an accident, and type of contract. When the two-factor measure was used, sensitivity of findings increased, and it was identified that those participants who were older, lived alone, and have more years of service in their profession also show worse workability. Important study. The conclusions are the study identified factors associated with the workability of health center workers. The two-factor workability index, that is WAI, has better psychometric properties and used in combination with a global measure of WAI. It identifies important additional aspects, specifically age and years of professional experience, as additional considerations for the intervention. Let's go to another study. Leisure, but not occupational physical activity and sedentary behavior associated with better health. Written by Gallagher, that is Jacob M.S. Gallagher and Lucas J. Carr. It was published in the Journal of Occupational Medicine. Next slide, please. And This is the original article, which came from Behavioral Medicine Laboratory, Department of Health and Human Physiology, University of Iowa, Iowa City, US. Clinical significance of the studies: findings may have significant impact on physical activity and sedentary behavior recommendations and intervention in the workplace. Determining the differential effects of leisure time and occupational physical activity is important to best inform workplace practices, including appropriate workplace health initiatives. Let's see the abstract. Next slide. The objective of the study was to explore the relation between occupational and leisure time physical activity, that is OPA and LTPA, and sedentary behavior, that is OSB and LTSB, and several health outcomes. A total of 114 full-time workers had their body composition, waist circumference, height, weight, resting heart rate, and resting blood pressure measured. Active poll monitor measured physical activity behaviors, stress, mood, and pain were measured with ecological momentary assessment. General linear models were used to examine the relationship between high and low OPA, LTPA, OSB, and LTSB with each health outcome while controlling for covariates. Next slide. Results were the high LTPA group had lower body mass index, that is BMI, with p-value of 0.04, and better mood, p-value 0.007, than the low LTPA group. The high LTSB group had high systolic blood pressure, p-value 0.001, higher diastolic blood pressure, p-value 0.01, higher BMI, p-value 0.027, higher body fat percentage, p-value 0.003, higher waist circumference, p-value 0.01, and worse mood, p-value 0.032 than the low LTSB group. No differences were found between OPA and OSB groups. The conclusion, therefore, is they suggest there may be differential relation between PA and SB accumulated during leisure versus occupational time. This is the table which shows comparison health outcome among participants with low and high occupational and leisure time physical activity. Next slide. Next slide. Another important article which has been published in the journal is developing a competency framework of interprofessional occupational health team, which is a first step to interprofessional education in occupational health field, by Fatima Kashmiri and Amir Hashang Meher Parwar in November 2020 issue. Next slide, please. The competency framework was finalized in 6 competency domains, including prevention, occupational disease management, occupational health assessments, interdisciplinary and interprofessional collaboration, education, and evidence-based practice and professionalism. Next slide. This came from Medical Education Department of Educational Development Center and Industrial Diseases Research Center of Shahid Sadoghi University of Medical Sciences in Yazd, Iran. Next slide, please. Clinical significance of this study is that interprofessional approach is important in providing occupational health services. The reform of educational programs for departments involved in OHS using interprofessional education strategy and competency-based approach is suggested. The competency framework of interprofessional OHS includes prevention, occupational health assessments, occupational disease management, interdisciplinary and interprofessional collaboration, education, and evidence-based practice and professionalism. So the journal is Journal of Occupational and Environmental Medicine. November 2021, 63rd volume, issue 11. Next slide. This is the abstract of this article. The objective was to aim to develop a competency framework for interprofessional collaboration in an occupational health team. The method used were, this study was carried out in 3 stages. In the first stage, the viewpoints of different stakeholders on the essential competencies of interprofessional team members in occupational health services were assessed. In the second stage, extracted codes were converted into competencies in expert panels. After that, the extracted items were categorized by inductive content analysis approach into competency framework. In the third stage, the content validity of interprofessional competencies in OHS was evaluated. Next slide. Results were the competency framework were finalized in 6 competency domains, including prevention, occupational disease management, occupational health assessments, interdisciplinary and interprofessional collaboration, education, and evidence-based practice and professionalism. Conclusion was the framework could be developed in interprofessional education in OHS based on competency-based education approach. Next slide. Again, I would like to inform all the attendees to this webinar. The 33rd International Congress on Occupational Health is going to be held in 2 stages for a great digital experience from Melbourne and Rome Global Digital Congress from 6 to 10 February 2022. Next slide, please. And the theme is sharing solutions in occupational health through and beyond the pandemic. Next slide. Though deadline for acceptance of confirmed participation is over, call for abstracts is also over. Abstract acceptance has been communicated, and standard registration fees were up to 10th November, extended 14 November, but still there is a discounted fee. Next slide. Now, ICO members from India can attend by paying 180 euros. And ICO non-members from India can attend with 235 euros. An ICO member student from India can attend by paying only 75 euros. An international congress of 5 days from any student in India can attend with paying only 75 euros. An ICO non-member student from India can attend by paying only 115 euros. Up till 10th of February, you can register. The registration is open at the website. Just Google ICO 2022. Next slide, please. And you will be able to hear a galaxy of global experts as keynote speakers and plenary speakers. Here, I've given you a screenshot of the keynote speakers in the plenary and the opening keynote speaker. Next slide, please. Abstracts will be there, and all these abstracts shall be published in the journal Safety and Health at Work. 37 disciplines of abstracts will be there, right from accident prevention to all the aspects of occupational and environmental medicine. Next slide. The last area which we are going to cover in today's episode is the National Family Health Survey number 5, 2019-21. I shall be sharing this with you now as a 7-page released by Government of India Niti Aayog. The study was conducted by International Institute of Population Sciences of Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, located in Mumbai, in Devna. Let's go see the fact sheets, the reality of this wide-ranging study. Episode 5 of NFHS, which is far-reaching in terms of its implications for all to see. Next slide, please. Next slide. Make it large, full screen, full view, full screen view. Yeah, yes. So population and household profile from NFHS 4, which was held in 2015-16 to NFHS 5, 2019-21. Female population age 6 years and above, whoever attended school, 68.8%, now it is 71.8. Population below age 15 years, earlier 28.6, now 26.5. Sex ratio of the total population, females per 1,000 population. For the first time in the history of India, females are 1,020. In 2015, it was 991. For the first time in the history of India, females are more than males. Sex ratio at birth for children born in the last 5 years, females per 1,000 males. It is 929, earlier it was 919. Children under age 5 years whose birth was registered with civil authority, 89%, earlier it was 79.7. Deaths in the last 3 years registered with the civil authority, 70%, earlier it was not available. Population living in household with electricity, earlier it was 88, now it is 96.8. Population living in household with an improved drinking water source from 94, it is now 95.8. Population living in household that use an improved sanitation facility from 48.5 to 70.2, great advance. Households using clean fuel for cooking, 43.8, now it is 58.6. Households using iodized salt, 93.1, now it is 94.3. Households with any usual member covered under health insurance financing scheme, earlier it was 28.7, now it is a great number, 41.0. Children aged 5 years who attended pre-primary school during school year 1920. Earlier it was not available, now it is 13.6. Women who are literate, now earlier it was not available, now it is 71.5. Men who are literate, 84.4. Women with 10 or more years of schooling, 41%. Men with 10 or more years of schooling, 52.2%. Women who have ever used the internet, 33.3%. Men who have ever used the internet, 57.1%. Women aged 20, 24 years married before age 18 years, it is 23.3, earlier it was 26.8. Men aged 25 to 29 years married before age 21 years, now it is 17.7, earlier it was 20.3. Total fertility rate, children per woman, now it has come down to, for the first time in the history of India, below the fertility rate of 2.1. It is now 2.0. Earlier it was 2.2. Population was growing. Now this population has stopped growing because the number of deaths and the number of births are balanced. Women aged 15 to 19 years who were already mothers or pregnant at the time of the survey, 6.8%. Earlier it was 7.9%. Adolescent fertility rate for women aged 15 to 19 years, earlier it was 51, now it is 43. Let's look at the neonatal mortality rate. It is now 24.9. Infant mortality rate, 35.2. Under 5 mortality rate, 41.9. So it is a great advance in terms of infant and child mortality. If you look at the figures on the right, there is a definite improvement. Let's see family planning methods. Any method is 88.6. Now look at the maternity. No, we go down. Yes. Mothers who had an antenatal checkup in the first trimester, 70%. Mothers who had at least 4 antenatal care visits, 58%. Mothers whose last birth was protected against neonatal tetanus, 92%. Mothers who consumed iron folic acid for 100 days or more when they were pregnant, 44%. Mothers who consumed iron folic acid for 180 days, 26%. Registered pregnancies for which the mother received mother and child protection card, 95.9%. Mothers who received postnatal care from doctor, nurse, LHV, A&M, midwife, other health personnel within 2 days of delivery, 78%. Average out-of-pocket expenditure per delivery in a public health facility was 2,916 rupees. Children born at home were taken to health facility for checkup within 24 hours birth, 4.2%. Children who received postnatal care from doctor, nurse, LHV, A&M, midwife, other health personnel within 2 days of delivery, 79.1%. Institutional births, 88.6%. Institutional births in public facility, 61.9%. Home births that were conducted by skilled health personnel, 3.2%. Births delivered by cesarean section, 21.5%. Births in a private health facility that were delivered by cesarean section, 47.4%. Births in a public health facility that were delivered by cesarean section, only 14.3%. Child vaccinations, children aged 12 to 23 months fully vaccinated based on information from either vaccination card or mother recall, 76.4%. Children aged 12 to 23 months fully vaccinated based on information from vaccination card, 83.8%. Children aged 12 to 23 months who have received BCG in 95%. Children aged 12 to 23 months who have received 3 doses of polio vaccine, 80.5%. And children aged 12 to 23 months who have received 3 doses of polio or DPT vaccine, 96.7%. Next slide. Please go down. Yes. Yes. Measles containing vaccine, 31.9%. 3 doses rotavirus, 36.4%. 3 doses of penta or hepatitis B vaccine, 83.9%. Vitamin A dose in last 6 months, 71.2%. Vaccination public health facility, 94.5%. Vaccination private health facility, only 4.2%. Treatment of childhood disease under 5 years. Child diarrhea, 2 weeks, diarrhea is 7.3%. Diarrhea within 2 weeks preceding the survey with ORS, 60.6%. Diarrhea who received zinc, 30.5%. Diarrhea with taken to health facility, it is 68.9%. Let's go to another sheet. Next sheet. Next, yes. This is important for occupational health practitioners. Look, go to the bottom. Blood sugar level among adults. Yes. Blood sugar level among adults aged 15 years and above. Mildly elevated blood pressure, systolic 140 to 159 or diastolic 90 to 99, 12.4%. Moderately or severely elevated blood pressure, systolic more than 160 or diastolic 100, 5.2%. Elevated blood pressure, either systolic 140 millimeter or diastolic 90 millimeter mercury, or taking medicine to control blood pressure, 21.3%. Imagine the real pandemic, the non-communicable disease along with communicable disease, pandemic COVID-19 and blood pressure. This was the figure from women. Men, it is coming to be 15.7% for mildly elevated blood pressure, 5.7% for moderately or severely elevated blood pressure, and elevated blood pressure is all taking medicine to control blood pressure, 24%, 1/4 population. And rural and urban, only if you see the difference, 22.7 and 26.6, urban 26.6 and rural 22.7. That is the scale of problem of hypertension in adults in India. Let's see diabetes, blood sugar level you've seen, 15.6. So cancer among adults. Screening only 1.9, cervical cancer, breast cancer 0.9, oral cavity 0.9, men, oral cavity examination for oral only 1.2. There is a real need to expand screening for cancer among adults 30 to 49 years. Then knowledge of HIV/AIDS among adults 15 to 49 years. Women who have comprehensive knowledge, only 21.6%. Men who have comprehensive knowledge, only 30.7%. Women who know that consistent condom use can reduce chance of getting HIV, 68.4%. Men who know that consistent condom use can reduce the chance of getting HIV, 82%. Now, look at the women's empowerment. Women aged 15 to 49 years. Currently married women who usually participate in 3 household decisions, 88%. Women who worked in the last 12 months and were paid in cash, 25%. Women owning a house and or land alone or jointly with others, 43.3%. Women having a bank or savings account that they themselves use. Look at the advance, 78.6% from 53%. Women having a mobile phone that they themselves use, 54%. Earlier it was 45.9%. Women aged 15 to 24 years who use hygienic methods of protection during their menstrual period, 77.3%. Earlier it was 57.6%. Gender-based violence, aged 18 to 49 years. Ever married women aged 18 to 49 years who ever experienced spousal violence, 29.3%. Imagine the real problem of spousal violence. Ever married women aged 18 to 49 years who experienced physical violence during any pregnancy, 3.1%. Young women aged 18 to 29 years who experienced sexual violence by age 18, 1.5%. So the problem is there for all of us to tackle. Last but not the least, tobacco use and alcohol consumption among adults, age 15 years and above. 8.9% women aged 15 years and above who use any kind of tobacco. 38% men aged 15 years and above who use any kind of tobacco. 38%. 1.3% women aged 15 years and above who consume alcohol. And men aged 15 years and above who consume alcohol, 18.8%. So tobacco and alcohol are real problems for all the people, all the community members, all the professionals, all the doctors, all the paramedical personnel, and all the colleagues at the workplace to tackle. Tobacco, alcohol, diabetes, hypertension are real problems in rural and urban areas in India. Besides, spousal violence, physical violence, and women's empowerment, and knowledge about oral screening, cancer, breast cancer screening, cervical cancer screening, and HIV/AIDS. So these were the issues which has come to light as real evidence for the India that we are living today. So these research studies show you how evidence can be used to frame policy on the ground and really improve the productivity and economy of our country. I'm really thankful to all of you for giving your attention, because attention is the biggest resource that you can give to all of us. Thank you so much for your attention and patience.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for elaborating all these parameters very much in details, which was very much important for all of us. You told about the climate changes in the initial lectures. After that, you told about what is the health emergencies, what are the factors which producing the carbon dioxide, how it can be controlled, what is the policy recommendations, pollution, power plant, air pollution, agricultural emissions, and implementation. The causes which particle PM 2.5 mm causes serious and lung diseases, stubble burning, and techniques to how to use the mask for air pollution as well as for the COVID. And after that, different parameters regarding health. So these are very elaborative and very, we can use in our life for if help is required from these slides. So now session should be open for the question answer. If anybody having any question, they can ask from the panelist, or himself, his speaker can answer it. So sir, there is one question in the panel. Dr. Sanjay Rotihar has written that, sir, statistics for the lactating mother taking calcium supplements is not good at present. Your comments, please.
Well, it is no doubt an important area which needs attention. And over the years, what is required to be done as a public policy, the challenge is to ensure that it is actually given on the ground. The channel of delivery is also a challenge, especially in rural areas, but needs attention, no doubt. Thank you for highlighting this aspect.
Otherwise, there is no question, sir. Everyone has thanked you for the good presentation and they have appreciated. So if any participant, attendee and panelist want to ask from the speaker, sir, then can go ahead.
Dr. Tyagaraja is present in the panel. Dr. Sanjay Rotihar is also there. If you want to make any comments or raise any question, you are most welcome.
Sir, it was a fantastic compilation. We are getting quite nicely updated. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Dr. Tyagaraja would like to make comments or questions.
So I think everyone is very much satisfied, sir, with your presentation, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And it's very learned slides and topic also, sir. So we hope that we all get the slide and also the video which you have presented initially.
It will be available in the YouTube channel, Enoch DigiConnect, Enoch DigiConnect YouTube channel. The entire set of slides and the video, it will be available shortly for all of us to watch. And in addition, there will be 103 other videos which everybody can listen and understand and receive again and again. This will be the 104th video on the channel which has been created on the YouTube ENOCH, Enoch DigiConnect. Just look it in the YouTube and connect and watch the channel and all the videos recordings of the webinar, including of today.
We will share the links, sir, in the in this Enoch Trust and ICO and as well as occupational health WhatsApp group, so that everyone can go through it.
Yeah.
So, sir, it was very nice presentation, and I can say that you have mastery in presentation, sir, because
Oh, not really.
because,
Not really.
because
I do appreciate your moderation and your initiative as a moderator.
yes,
I'm
sir.
really grateful that you've started moderating DigiConnect webinar. I wish a long subsequent moderation of this academic platform.
Thank you, sir, for comments and encouraging me. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. So we call it a day then.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you so much.
Thank you.
you.